Well, folks, it's been another long week, and now it's time to relax, blow off some steam, and get weird. Welcome to a new chapter of the extraordinary where the boundaries of reality blur and the mysteries of the universe unfold before us. I'm Matt Blank, your guide through this labyrinth of the bizarre and the unexplainable. As we embark on this journey of discovery, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for me. Your support is the fuel that keeps our exploration alive and thriving. Anyways, welcome, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Blank Space. I'm Matt Blank, and this is my space. For our first story, scientists were able to simulate gravitational waves of warp drive failure signatures, proving the physics behind warp travel actually exist. But that's not all. Eventually, after further research, it could potentially lead to a working theory for time travel. Tonight, we're diving into a fascinating realm where science fiction meets cutting-edge physics. A recent study has simulated gravitational waves from a hypothetical failing warp drive, opening new avenues for theoretical physics and expanding our understanding of the universe. Since 1994, when physicist Miguel Alcubierre first proposed the concept of a warp drive, researchers have been exploring the theoretical possibilities of faster-than-light travel. Now, 30 years later, in 2024, we've seen a significant advancement in this field. While this does not provide a working model, warp drive, or proof of time travel already existing, it does prove the physics behind it exist. This provides us with new tools to explore these concepts mathematically and eventually, after years of research and development, the way forward to exploring our own working models. Let's dive into the fascinating world of the Alcubierre drive. Now, this concept suggests that a spacecraft could in principle achieve faster-than-light travel by manipulating space-time itself. Imagine space-time as a flexible fabric. The Alcubierre drive would theoretically work by compressing the fabric of space-time in front of the craft and expanding it behind creating what we call a warp bubble.
As complex as it may appear to be, in this case, since normal matter warps space inwards, hence why we have gravity, negative mass would warp space outwards. This is the key of his warp field theory. To better visualize this, think of it as the path of the ship inside a tube. In order for the warp field to work, it would contract the front of the tube towards the ship, bringing some distant point of space-time closer to it. And as it approaches the center, it slowly transitions to an expansion behind it. So space-time moves around the ship, and inside the bubble, nothing is moving, or space-time remains flat. Since there is no known limit to how space-time can contract or expand, in theory, anything inside the bubble can travel faster than the speed of light. All you need to do is increase the warp field.
The idea of the Alcubierre warp drive is to encapsulate a bit of space-time, creating a sort of bubble. The passengers would be in a ship inside this bubble of space-time. The ship itself would not be moving relative to the space-time, so there would be no time dilation for people inside the ship. But this bubble of space-time could in theory be moving at any arbitrary speed relative to the space-time around it. This is analogous to a person on a surfboard. The person is standing still relative to the surfboard, but the surfboard is moving relative to the sea around it. Since the ship can theoretically move many times the speed of light, it could get to very far away destinations like Proxima Centauri, which is 4.2 light years away, for example, in 10 months, traveling 5 times the speed of light.
Ah yes, I can just picture it now. Patrick Stewart talking to his second in command. Maximum warp, number 1. I have to take a number 2. To help visualize this, picture a surfer riding a wave. The surfer isn't actually moving at all, but instead, the surrounding water is moving. The surfer is then carried by the wave in motion. Like riding in a car, the passengers are not moving at all, but the space around them, the car, is moving. Similarly, an Alcubierre drive would not move through space in the conventional sense, but would ride a wave of compressed space-time. This concept is deeply rooted in Einstein's theory of relativity, which fundamentally changed our understanding of space and time. According to this theory, space and time are not separate entities, but are woven together into a four-dimensional fabric called space-time. Massive objects like stars and planets curve this fabric, creating what we perceive as gravity. The theory of relativity also introduces the mind-bending concept that time can pass at different rates depending on factors like velocity and gravitational fields. The theory of relativity has since been proven accidentally when astronauts and satellites began being launched into space. This is known as a relativistic time dilation. For instance, time moves slightly slower for astronauts on the International Space Station compared to us on Earth due to their increased velocity and lower gravitational influence. The same goes for GPS satellites first launched into space, using atomic clocks to provide precise time signals for triangulating positions on Earth. After launch, scientists were stunned to discover these clocks were going out of sync with Earth's clock due to relativistic effects. This unexpected phenomenon not only created mass confusion, but also provided tangible proof of Einstein's theories of special and general relativity. Scientists were baffled as they watched the GPS accuracy deteriorate rapidly. Initially precise measurements became increasingly erroneous, with discrepancies growing from 5 miles to 10 miles and beyond. This rendered the first GPS satellites essentially useless for accurate navigation, highlighting the critical need to account for relativistic time dilation in space-based technologies. What began as a navigational challenge inadvertently became a profound demonstration of fundamental physics principles. There goes a few $1 billion down the drain. Now, let's talk about the recent study that's causing so much excitement in the scientific community. Researchers have simulated the signature gravitational waves emitted if a warp drive failed, like exhaust emissions from a car engine. Gravitational waves are ripples in the fabric of space-time, first predicted by Einstein and finally detected in 2015. I swear, sometimes I think that man must have been clairvoyant in many ways. I realized that knowing what he knew then made many of the theory's logical conclusions at the time. But keep in mind, his theories developed in the 1950s were only later proven to be correct after decades, and even today only with the existence of modern technology. Anyways, let's take a look at the current breakthroughs.
Imagine spaceships traveling faster than the speed of light. Today, we're diving into a topic that's been a dream for sci-fi fans and physicists alike: warp drives. While it sounds like pure science fiction, researchers are actually exploring the theoretical foundations of warp drives, grounded in Einstein's general relativity. The idea isn't just fiction, it's based on real physics. But here's the catch. Actually building a warp drive would require exotic materials that we don't currently have, like negative energy. Plus, controlling and deactivating such a drive poses huge challenges. The new study, simulating a warp drive breakdown. This brings us to the latest research, a collaboration between physicists from Queen Mary University of London, the University of Potsdam, the Max Planck Institute for Gravitational Physics, and Cardiff University. These researchers aren't claiming to have built a warp drive, but they've taken a big step forward by simulating what might happen if a warp drive were to fail. Dr. Katie Clough from Queen Mary University, the lead author of the study, explains that even though warp drives are theoretical, they're well defined in general relativity. This means we can use numerical simulations to predict what might happen if one of these drives collapsed. So, what did they find? According to the simulations, a collapsing warp drive would generate a burst of gravitational waves, a ripple in space-time. These waves would be different from the ones we detect from black hole and neutron star collisions. Instead of a long, drawn-out signal, this would be a short, high-frequency burst. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Current gravitational wave detectors, like LIGO, wouldn't be able to pick up this signal because it's too high frequency. But future detectors might be able to. The technology to build these high-frequency instruments exists, and if they ever get funded, we could use them to search for evidence of warp drives, even if we can't build one ourselves. This could help us understand the evolution of the universe or what's happening at the center of black holes. These simulations will help guide the development of real-world warp technology.
This research is crucial because it helps us understand the dynamics of exotic spacetimes. Theoretical configurations of spacetime that, based on our prior understanding of physics, could potentially violate known physical laws. The implications of this research are profound. While we're not at the point of building warp drives or time machines yet, this study provides a framework for how we might detect such technologies, including black holes that also emit these same gravitational signatures. The gravitational waves emitted from a warp drive might be detectable across vast cosmic distances. This presents a novel approach to the search for advanced civilizations. Instead of just looking for radio signals, we could search for these unique gravitational wave signatures. It's important to note, however, that this is still firmly in the realm of physics. We don't have any of the technology created yet, but we have begun our journey down that road. The study also touches on the fascinating topic of time travel. While it doesn't prove time travel is possible in the traditional sense, like going to the future or visiting the dinosaurs, it does provide a theoretical framework for how manipulations of space-time can affect the flow of time. In the warped space-time around a warp drive, time would behave very differently than it does in normal space. It pushes the boundaries of our understanding of space-time and opens up new questions for future research and development. This kind of work is vital for advancing our understanding of the universe. Even if it takes a lifetime before we're able to build a warp drive, the mathematics and physics developed in these studies can have applications in other areas of science and technology as well. For instance, our understanding of exotic spacetimes could potentially help us better understand phenomena like black holes. Speaking of black holes, this study showcases how gravitational wave astronomy is opening new ways to study the universe in a whole new light. We've already detected gravitational waves from colliding black holes and neutron stars. As our detection methods improve, we may be able to hear more of the universe's gravitational wave symphony. In summary, while we're still a long ways from building starships or time machines, this research represents an exciting step forward in physics required to guide us in that direction. It demonstrates the power of mathematical modeling and computer simulations to explore concepts that we can't yet test in the real world. Who knows what discoveries might lie ahead as we continue to push the boundaries of our understanding. Well, folks, that's all for this segment. But speaking of time travel, our next story tonight reveals some of history's most remarkable predictions from the past. Beginning with the story of John Alfred Watkins, a visionary who at the dawn of the 20th century penned predictions that have remarkably come true. Imagine being able to peer into the future with such clarity that your forecasts resonate over a century later. Watkins, an American civil engineer, published a series of predictions in 1900 about what life would be like in the year 2000. His insights were not just educated guesses, they were eerily accurate glimpses into the technological advancements that would shape our modern world.
In 1900, John Alfred Watkins wrote an article for the Ladies' Home Journal entitled "What May Happen in the Next 100 Years." Watkins was an American civil engineer and was merely responding to the age-old need of the press to make predictions at certain key times. In this case, the turn of the 20th century. Readers expect that. Watkins was also a writer for a sister publication to the Ladies' Home Journal. He made a host of predictions in his very well thought out article, including almost getting the population of the United States right for the year 2000, and predicting the rise of ready-cooked meals, and even very accurately predicted a 2-inch height increase over 100 years for the average American man. 3 of his predictions were particularly stunning though. He predicted satellite television in 1900. Man will see around the world. Persons and things of all kinds will be brought within focus of cameras connected electrically, with screens at opposite ends of circuits, thousands of miles at a span. He predicted that one day, colour photographs could be transmitted instantly around the world. Photographs will be telegraphed from any distance. If there be a battle in China 100 years hence, snapshots of its most striking events will be published in the newspaper an hour later. Photographs will reproduce all of nature's colours. He predicted mobile phones and international telephony. Wireless telephone and telegraph circuits will span the world. A husband in the middle of the Atlantic will be able to converse with his wife sitting in her boudoir in Chicago. We will be able to telephone to China quite as readily as we now talk from New York to Brooklyn. He didn't get everything right though. He also predicted that there'd be no C, X or Q in the alphabet by the year 2000. I've just checked and they're still there. But there's no denying that the majority of his predictions were absolutely accurate. They were made 125 years ago in a little-known journal, and they seal John Watkins' place in history as a major thinker and futurist of his day.
Let's delve into some of Watkins' most striking predictions. He foresaw the advent of digital color photography, predicting that photographs would be telegraphed from any distance and would reproduce all of nature's colors. This vision aligns perfectly with today's digital cameras and the instant sharing of images across the globe. Watkins also predicted the rise of mobile phones, envisioning a world where wireless telephone and telegraph circuits would span the planet, allowing people to converse over long distances without the need for wires. Sound familiar? It's the very foundation of our modern communication networks. But Watkins didn't stop there. He anticipated high-speed trains, foreseeing trains running at speeds of up to 150 miles per hour. Today, high-speed rail networks crisscross many countries, making this prediction a reality. His foresight extended to advancements in health, predicting that cancer would be eradicated, a goal that we continue to strive towards with modern medical research and technology. Let's hope that that prediction also comes to pass. Now let's shift gears to another intriguing prediction from the past, one that involves the Titanic. Before the infamous ship met its tragic fate, author Morgan Robertson wrote a novel titled Futility, which eerily foreshadowed the disaster. Robertson's fictional ship was described as unsinkable and struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic, mirroring the real-life tragedy of the Titanic. The similarities between these two are uncanny, leading many to speculate about the nature of foresight and coincidence.
The year is 1911. Fall of 1911. On the southwest coast of Greenland, a chunk of glacial ice breaks off of its glacier and floats into the ocean, slowly getting smaller and moving south. 6 months later, it will be as much as 100 feet high and have a large hidden barb under the water. Back to civilization, one of the things that rich people like to do is travel in luxury long distances between the richest cities in the world. Also, lots of immigrants want to come to America because it's cool. And since planes aren't that good yet, their only option is a big cool ship with chandeliers and carpets and stuff. Seeing this American rich guy, JP Morgan, and the British company White Star Lines that he's sort of owned, team up to make the fanciest, biggest ever ships for people to cross the Atlantic on. Thus, the Olympic class of ships were made. 3 vessels, the Olympic, the Britannic, and the Titanic, were built from 1908 to 1915 and would be the biggest ships in the world. Of course, for this video, we're only interested in one of these, The Titanic was 882 feet long and 175 feet tall, the largest ship ever made to that point. It had 16 watertight compartments with watertight doors for the crew to move throughout the ship. Titanic could stay afloat if 4 of them were flooded, causing the ship to be marketed as unsinkable, and actually was quite safe for the time. On top of that, it was luxurious with 3 elevators, a swimming pool, a barber shop, a Turkish bath, and even a squash court. The most expensive tickets being around £870, or about 161,500 modern dollars. That being said, cheaper tickets would run just over £7, so it wasn't just rich people aboard, and there were lots of poor immigrants. The ship was laid down in Belfast, Ireland, and took 4 years to make and furnish. Launching in April of 1912, the Titanic made the short trip to Southampton, England, to start its maiden voyage across the Atlantic. The maiden voyage continued, stopping off for a day in Cherbourg, France, then Queenstown, Ireland. The Titanic, with about 2,200 people on board, set sail from New York City. But on the evening of April 14th, a warning came in through the radio. Other ships in the area off the Newfoundland coast had seen lots of floating ice, and all nearby ships were advised to slow down and be on the lookout. Captain Edward Smith, however, ignored this and kept moving at full steam ahead through the frigid waters and changed course, but we can't be too harsh on him. At the time, icebergs were thought to be more or less harmless, and while they could cause damage, the Titanic was so big, the concern was even smaller. But sadly, something went wrong. At 11:30 p.m., the lookout of the ship spotted an iceberg ahead and warned the captain. They tried to slow down and divert the ship, but the warning didn't come soon enough since the lookout didn't have binoculars. The iceberg, which was actually much larger than it had appeared on the surface, scraped against the starboard bow, causing a few tears between 5 and 45 feet long. The Titanic was taking on water, with 5 watertight compartments being flooded, too much for the ship to take. Radio calls and signal flares would go up, but help wouldn't arrive until hours later. One ship, the SS Californian, was nearby, but did not come to help since its radios were turned off. The sinking was not incredibly fast, and at first many people did not even think it would sink. More problems arose as people realized that the ship didn't have enough lifeboats, only 20, and not everyone could get off. This too was normal for the time, since any crash Titanic was thought to get into would be minor, and a full-scale evacuation wouldn't ever be necessary. When the lifeboats began to be loaded, women and children first, many people didn't even want to go as the crash didn't seem too serious, so many lifeboats went into the water far under capacity. But as water filled the foremost compartments, the bows sunk deeper, and since the watertight compartments weren't sealed from the top, water began to spill over into the neighboring parts, causing more and more water to creep in, slowly causing the ship to tilt steeply into the air. About 2.5 hours after the strike, the ship started to sink a lot faster before the power went out and the ship split in half, with the flooded bows sinking to the bottom and the stern settling back on the surface before sinking not long after. In all, over 1,500 people died, mostly men and third-class passengers. Most died from exposure floating in the cold 28-degree water. Only 706 people survived. Afterwards, an investigation was done to figure out what went wrong. Ultimately, the disaster was mostly chalked up to an act of God or just a freak accident, but some blame was cast on Captain Smith, who should have had the ship go slower and handle the evacuation better, and the SS Californian, which should have saved survivors earlier. In 1985, the wreck of the Titanic was discovered 12,500 feet below the surface, and in 1997 they made a cool movie about it.
Amazingly, Robertson's novel had many specific details that aligned with the events of the Titanic disaster exactly, and were impossible to know when he wrote Futility over a decade before, naming the fictional ship in his book, The Titan. Here we see what he wrote and the eerie comparison to the Titanic incident.
In 1898, Morgan Robertson wrote a novella called Futility. Unlike a lot of predictions on this list, nobody's suggesting that Robertson sat down aiming to predict the future, but somehow that's exactly what he did. By 1912, people of the day assumed that Morgan Robertson was bestowed with superhuman powers of foresight because of startling similarities between his book and the heartbreaking loss of the Titanic. For in his 1898 book, he writes of an ocean liner called the Titan. The Titan was the largest ocean liner in the world. The Titanic was the largest ocean liner in the world. In Robertson's book, Titan was described as unsinkable. 14 years later, Titanic was described as unsinkable. Robertson said that Titan was huge, over 800 feet long. The Titanic, 14 years later, was 882 feet long. In his 1898 book, Titan sets out on a transatlantic trip to New York, just like the Titanic. Titan then hits an iceberg midway across the Atlantic. In fact, Robertson makes it clear that the Titan didn't actually just hit the iceberg, it sideswipes the iceberg and it opens its hull. Robertson says in his book that if the Titan had hit the iceberg head on, it would have been okay. 14 years later, Titanic sideswiped an iceberg, opening up 5 watertight compartments in its hull. It would later be proved that Titanic would have survived a head-on crash, just as Robertson had prophesied. The 1898 fictional liner, the Titan, sinks with the loss of over half of its passengers. It wasn't carrying enough lifeboats, just like the Titanic. Robertson had seemingly predicted in incredible detail the loss of the Titanic. The book was re-released in 1912 and retitled The Wreck of the Titan. I presume to cash in on its notoriety.
These stories of remarkable predictions challenge our understanding of time and knowledge. They remind us that while we may not have a crystal ball, the human mind is capable of extraordinary foresight. Whether through careful observation, intuition, or sheer coincidence, these predictions offer a tantalizing glimpse into the possibilities of the future. As we look back on these visions from the past, we're left to ponder the boundaries of human imagination and the mysteries of time itself. Who knows what predictions made today might come true in the next century? History, it seems, is not just a record of what has been, but a canvas for what will be. Now, unexplained lights over Arizona and the government finally releasing and admitting to UFOs. Next up, we head to the vast open skies of Arizona, where residents were left stunned by a series of unexplained lights. These weren't your typical twinkling stars or passing airplanes. No, these lights danced and zigzagged across the sky in a way that defied logic and left onlookers scratching their heads. Witnesses described them as a fleet of glowing orbs in perfect harmony, as if performing a celestial ballet. Was it a UFO or just another secret military test? The footage captured by stunned onlookers has gone viral, sparking debates and conspiracy theories alike across the globe. And this isn't the first time a large-scale sighting event has happened over Phoenix, including the famous mass sightings in 1997 that just celebrated its 27th anniversary this year. Let's look at them now and people's thoughts on the experience.
Today marks 26 years since the mysterious Phoenix lights appeared over the valley.
And we still don't know what it was, but there are plenty of theories out there. It was the evening of March 13th, 1997. People across Arizona, especially here in the valley, reported seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead. Was it a military mission, a prank perhaps, or visitors from outer space? The questions and confusion over the sighting have only grown during the prevailing years.
Now, of course, we're much more open to it recently as being real, and the Phoenix Lights is one of the premier mass sightings that they're looking at as being authentic, because thousands of people saw these massive craft or objects hover right over them, glide right over them, rooftop level. Some people said they could have thrown a stone at it. It was that close.
Well, last night, I don't know, maybe you saw some of this in the sky?
It's a little hard to see it right there, but it's weird. It looked weird.
It was hovering over the Phoenix area last night.
So whenever that happens, you know what the reaction is. A lot of people are talking about it today, and it was a reminder of the infamous Phoenix lights 25 years ago. Fox 10's Brian Webb's been looking into this. He joins us live with the latest. Cue the X-Files music.
Well, something was up there. We have video of that, but here we go again for sure. So the first explanation came from the National Weather Service. They seem to chalk it up to Starlink satellites launched by SpaceX. But a lot of people who saw those same lights aren't quite so sure. They're back, a long, strange string of lights visiting the valley in the night sky. Residents rushing to get shots on their cell phones, then left scratching their heads.
They were just moving like fast. There was no blinking lights or anything like that.
Jesse Farmer shot video of it over South Phoenix during the early morning hours. Dozens of lights dotting the dark sky. But his buddies didn't believe him.
He laughed about it and was like, maybe you need to go to sleep. I was like, bro, trust me. After I caught video of it.
This family saw them too, right about 9:30 from their home in Surprise.
And I saw something like with a big parade, like in the sky, like there was a bunch of snow things and was tiny and called light bulbs.
60 lights or more heading horizontally in a perfect line, perfectly spaced and perfectly silent, leaving this family perfectly perplexed.
It was pretty wild. I mean, I don't know if you saw the footage or heard the audio. I was pretty stunned.
As for reports of it being a group of satellites, these witnesses say no way in the world.
Satellites being launched.
That's what they're saying.
But that's what they're
I
saying.
don't know. This is pretty strange.
It was unbelievable. Like, you couldn't believe it. I was like, there's no way that this is man-made.
Okay, I emailed the people at SpaceX today to try to get some explanation or comment, but did not hear back. Live in Phoenix, I'm Brian Webb, Fox 10 News.
The lights moved in patterns no regular aircraft could, leaving even the most skeptical observers questioning their beliefs. Are we alone in the universe, or is someone or something watching us? This isn't the first time Arizona has been at the center of UFO sightings, and it certainly won't be the last. The state's vast deserts and clear skies make it a hotspot for unexplained aerial phenomena. As we delve deeper into the mysteries of the universe, stories like these remind us of how much we have yet to discover. We know barely anything. It's enough to make anyone look twice at the night sky, wondering what secrets it holds. In recent years, the conversation around these mysterious sightings has taken a dramatic turn. The U.S. Senate has held hearings on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs as they are now officially called. During these hearings, military officials have released video captured by Navy pilots, showing objects moving at incredible speeds and performing maneuvers that defy the laws of physics. The military has stated that these objects are not of human origin, adding an official layer of intrigue to what was once considered fringe speculation. These Senate hearings can be seen in full on YouTube, but being over 2 hours long, I only show a piece of it here.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Nickel 6-1 Tango, Roger, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
The House Oversight Committee will host its first public hearing on this issue since 1969.
Representatives from the Pentagon will be asked questions by lawmakers about what the U.S. government knows about all those strange lights in the sky.
These things very well may be real, and it's about time we heard more about what our government knows about them.
The members of Congress represent the people of the United States. The people want information. Congress wants more transparency from the Pentagon on this topic.
Undersecretary Moultrie, Mr. Bray.
The two witnesses that are being called are high-level officials. Ronald Moultrie is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and Scott Bray is Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. Both of them obviously know a great deal about the Pentagon's research into UFOs.
There have been no collisions between any U.S. assets and one of these UAPs, correct?
We have not had a collision. We've had at least 11 near misses.
Do we have any sensors underwater to detect submerged UAPs?
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session, sir.
Okay. Can you say with 100% certainty that they are physical objects?
I can say with certainty that a number of these are physical objects.
It's also been reported that there have been UAP observed flying over sensitive military facilities. One such incident allegedly occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, in which 10 of our nuclear ICBMs were rendered inoperable. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of this. I'm simply asking you whether you're aware of it.
I have heard stories. I have not seen the official data on that.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty high-profile incident. You're the guys investigating it. I mean, who else is doing it?
Overall, it's a huge step that the hearings even happened, but it was frustrating because they just didn't say that much.
When our own military fighter pilots, the best in the world, they're up there and they're saying, what in the world is this? We should be concerned.
Congress is doing exactly the right thing. If their constituents are demanding answers, then Congress needs to demand answers.
Now that the government has acknowledged that UFOs are real, they're physical, they're a national security concern, it raises a lot of questions. The main one being, what are these things? Where are they from? Why are they here?
Let's try to break it down one by one in terms of the technology that we see. We now know that these objects go between Mach 5 and Mach 20, 20 times the speed of sound. They can fly in the air, and they can go even underwater. What could be behind that? Why should they go underwater?
Surprisingly enough, we've explored more of the moon than we've explored of our ocean floors on this planet. So our ocean floors are just as much of a mystery to us as are some of the moons orbiting some of the planets in our solar system.
People ask a lot, well, what do you think they are? When I started out, I was probably pretty convinced of the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that they were just visitors from another planet. But I've come to learn since that the phenomenon is way more complicated.
But that's not all. In a groundbreaking revelation, an Air Force general turned whistleblower testified before Congress claiming that non-human biologicals were retrieved from crashed craft.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
He also revealed that he had been briefed on a secretive program tasked with studying and reverse engineering these UAPs. This testimony has sent shockwaves through both the scientific community and the general public, as it suggests that we may be on the brink of understanding technologies far beyond our current capabilities. These developments have reignited interest in the skies above us, prompting a reevaluation of what we know about our universe. Oddly, even after the U.S. government release of UFO videos and its confirmation of the existence of UFOs, the U.S. government has since gone all but silent, even as UFO activity reaches an all-time high. As more information comes to light, the question remains, what are these objects, and what do they mean for the future of humanity? It's a mystery that continues to captivate our imagination and challenge our understanding of reality. I think it's no coincidence that we're talking about warp drives now. Interesting.
Well, folks, that's the end of part 1 for this week's episode of Blank Space. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support is the fuel that keeps this curiously bizarre train alive and thriving. Stay tuned next week for part 2 and episode for of season 2. Remember, sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. The most important thing is to stay weird and stay curious.